Hey there, what's happening? Coach Chris here with the Strong by Design podcast, sitting across from the one, the only, Zach. And it's do you say Zenios or
Zenios?
It's Zenios.
Like Zen.
Yeah. Wow. So it was like you were destined to be a yoga guy, huh?
It just came naturally. I just followed my last name and boom, there was yoga.
Man, welcome, man.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Anyone listening who's familiar with our Criticalbench YouTube channel is probably familiar with your face, at least, or your physique. Hubba hubba. Zach's in fantastic shape, and we'll get into that stuff in a little bit. But it's awesome to have you here and to touch on something that affects. I think Mike was telling me a stat the other day when it comes to yoga, like half the country. It was like 150 or 100 million people, or something absurd, huge number, have interest in yoga.
Yeah.
Have either searched it or participate in it or something. Somehow they are
engaged in yoga.
And it's a staggering number because it's huge. When there's only like 300 million people in this country, and you start getting in the hundreds of millions with stats, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely, people are just becoming more aware of their bodies and their minds and wellness.
Yeah.
And we're moving into that. Same thing with food. There's a bigger demand for organic food and healthier foods. So that it goes along the same lines. There's just more awareness to health and well-being. Yeah. Which is a really good thing.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. Yeah. Being a little bit more in touch, or at least interested.
At least interest. That's the first step. You got to be interested.
People have functioning on autopilot for so long. We just whatever we hear, oh, this is good for you. Okay. So you don't do any research or any, So first, before we get into really, I want to talk to you about what we're doing currently with you here on a regular basis, and what your journey looks like right now in terms of yoga and instruction and all the learning and the experiences that you've had recently. But take us back to Zach from 5-6 years ago, because you're 24?
I'm 24.
Yeah, so this is a young guy. Young, good-looking, ripped guy, all you ladies, and he's single. So what was your life like as an 18-year-old? And because it's important, I think, for people to know this, and because it's an interesting path.
Yeah, so I actually joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. 2 days after graduating high school, I left for boot camp. And that was a big decision in my life. I really had the call to adventure. I had a need to get out in the world and explore and adventure. And that was a huge decision that I made when I was 17, actually, a year before I graduated. So I started training with the Marines, and I started getting used to the culture. And then right out of high school, went to boot camp. And those 4 years, from the ages of 18 to 22, those were the biggest growth periods of my life. I look back on those, and I'm grateful for those years, because I grew so much as a person. I learned so much about myself. I overcame challenges, and it was just such a growth period. That's how I feel that people grow, is by overcoming challenges, learning who they are, and then, being miserable at times, and then overcoming it and realizing, wow, I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. And, I also got to travel the world, see different perspectives, see that the way that our country, America, operates is not the only way. And there is no right or wrong way, there's just different ways. Mm-hmm. And being able to see that at such a young age, that really opens up your mind. Being able to live with other cultures and see how they operate really brings to light the diversity of life on our planet. And I'm so grateful, and I'm so blessed that, I did my 4 years, I got out, I'm unharmed, I still, because a lot of my really close friends, they either didn't make it or they got out, and life has been a real challenge. So I'm really blessed to be where I am right now.
Yeah, in a good place,
In a
like
good place.
mentally
Mm-hmm.
as well as physically. Yeah, because my father was a Marine, and my uncle and my college roommate actually was a Marine. He was in the first Gulf War back in '93.
Yeah.
And they all had different experiences and they were all Marines, and they all different experiences, but they were all left afterwards. They were all different people.
Yeah, for sure.
And some people can deal with things better than others. I feel like some people can't get past the past.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what they went through. Did it make you, it's like a total side question, did it make you more proud of the country that you're from? Like, did it fill you with more pride, or more, are you more patriotic than you were when you were 18 coming out of the Marines? It's just curious.
See, when I was 18, I kind of had a false sense of, I don't want to say patriotism, but I had a false sense of masculinity.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 18, my mentality was, you know, I wanted to kick down doors, and I wanted to, you know, defend our country by whatever means necessary for that. And I wanted to be out in danger. I wanted to experience, you know, combat and all these things, which is why I decided to choose infantry. Now, I actually was presented the option to have any job that I wanted in the Marine Corps because my ASVAB score, which is the test that you take to get in, my score was high enough for any job. But when I went there, I was like, no, you know, I'm joining the Marines because I want to be on the front lines. I want to go and I want to see the combat, even though my recruiter was like, hey, you know, like, you can have any job you want. You can be intelligence, you can be anything. I was like, no, like, I want to be out there. And so now when I look back on that, I see that as, you know, I was young, I was energetic, but I was, you know, all that energy was displaced in not necessarily a healthy way.
Right.
But I had to go through it. That was part of my journey to be able to see, like, oh, you know, that wasn't a proper use of, you know, my energy, my masculinity. I didn't need to be kicking down doors and you know, doing the things that I wanted to do in order to, you know, be who I wanted to be. So just being able to see that hyper masculine mentality, that need to go, you know, blow stuff up and you do the cool things you see in the movies.
Yeah.
That's not really realistic. You know, combat is not glorious. There's nothing glorious about combat. There's nothing glorious about, you know, seeing the things that you see. There's nothing glorious about that.
Yeah.
And you have to actually, you know, be put in that environment, be put with other people experiencing that to really understand it. So that is how I wouldn't say I'm less patriotic now than I was back then. I would say I'm proud of the fact that I was a Marine, but I see it as, you know, we don't need to go out there and blow things up and do that. So I'm more proud of my country in a way, but at the same time, I'm less, you know, aggressive towards that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because, hey, a lot of us are, I remember myself at 18, 19, you just feel like you're unstoppable.
Yeah,
you know? I mean,
invincible.
you really do, invincible. You're like an alpha male, you're like a wolf, you know, out in the, you know, just running free and doing what you want to do, you know, and no one knows better than you. And but it also kind of allowed you, I guess, to get a lot of that out of your system, I guess, you know, to a degree, to get to the place that you are now. So you came out, you're 22, and you're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do in my life here?
Yeah, so actually I was fortunate enough. There was a point in time, I lived in Japan for 6 months on my second deployment. And this was right before I got out. So I was 21, I turned 22 in Japan. And there was a period of time for about 2 months out of the 6 where my whole battalion, my whole platoon, everyone went to South Korea to train. I was left behind to take care of one of the Marines that broke his leg during martial arts. So for 2 months, I was pretty much alone most of the time. You know, I worked out, I really got into fitness, but I did more than that. I really got into personal development. For the first time in my life, I really focused on me. You know, that's when I started meditating. And I'll get more into meditating as we go on.
Yeah.
But that's when I really started to learn who I was. That's when I discovered what I want to do with my life when I got out. Because up to that point, when people ask me, hey, what do you want to do when you get out? I don't know. I don't really know what I want to do. I'm not sure. When those 2 months the way I see it is when you're alone, you can either feel lonely or you can be in solitude. I found solitude there. I was happy with being by myself. Mm-hmm. I was getting all kinds of insights and I was on another level when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So right after that, I got out of the Marines, and my mom has always been into yoga. So she said, hey, why don't you try yoga? And at this point, I've already been meditating for 6 months or a little bit longer than that. So it was a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, I'll try yoga.
Which is, like you've defined it before, it's like meditation with the physical component added in.
Yeah, yoga is much more than just stretching or, seeing people get bent into pretzel shapes and all that like you see on Instagram or on social media. Yoga is so much more than that. But the reason why I was so drawn to yoga is because I've always been into physical sports. In the Marines, I really got into bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. I was about 20 pounds bigger than I am today. I was just, surrounded by alpha men in a job that was all men, where only, really my escape was the gym. So I was lifting heavy weights. I was, in a hyper masculine environment, always aggressive.
Right.
And that causes a lot of problems. I had a lot of anger issues. I had a lot of resentment. I was always wound up. I was always strung. I was always I would snap.
Right.
I had a short fuse. And so when I started meditating and I got out and I started doing yoga, I used it as a way to balance out that aggressive nature in me, that masculinity that needed to, always be out there and lift heavy things. I needed yoga to balance me out. And so that is why I started doing it. On top of all the injuries that I, sustained, I've had several bulges, disc bulges, 2 different kinds of hernias, shoulder problems. So I used yoga. What drew me at first was the physical aspect. Mm-hmm. The aspect of, I'm going to be holding nice stretches. I'm going to be working on my core strength, my balance. And as I got more and more into yoga, I realized that yoga is so much more than just the physical aspect. I mean, sure, yoga will give you flexibility. Sure, yoga will improve your balance, and it will just make you feel better in your body. But it does so much more than that. It's a mind. It strengthens your mind-body connection, and its benefits extend beyond the physical.
And it gets you, and I know you'd be bringing us up anyway, but I can't help myself. It gets you to focus on the most important thing that we all have to do: breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us breathe wrong,
yes,
or shallow, or just and we don't realize how beneficial it is to actually focus on the breath.
Oh yeah, the breath is key. The breath is key in all aspects of life.
Right.
So the breath is part of our autonomic nervous system. It happens on its own. It happens when we're sleeping. We don't have to pay any attention to the breath. It just kind of happens. And because of that, we don't pay any attention to it. We're always in our minds. One thought turns into another thought.
Yeah.
And we become overwhelmed and we become stressed. And the breath is the anchor. The breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. The breath is the one way that we can affect our physiological state.
Yeah.
It can affect how we feel, our level of thinking. The breath is key, and too many people take that for granted, that it happens on its own.
Yeah.
So that's why yoga, proper yoga, when you do it, when you move with the breath.
I love it too when you're like, yoga.
Yeah. You gotta add some personality.
Yeah,
to
it, it's great. I've come to love it myself just from you, teaching it. But continue proper yoga.
So proper yoga, not the yoga where you see like huffing and puffing. And yes, yoga can be vigorous, but it doesn't have to be fast paced. You can do yoga, but it has to be mindfully. You have to be conscious. You have to make every movement deliberate, and that's what the breath is there for. When you extend, you inhale. When you release, you exhale, and it becomes almost as like the ocean. the gentle waves. It's the in and out of the breath. And when you first experience that, that is when you realize, oh, there is something more to this yoga stuff. It's not just about stretching. This is a mind, body, and spirit. This is an exercise for all aspects of your being, not just stretching.
Yeah, because so many people, number one, most people don't focus on their breath. And I would probably say if you had 10 people and asked how many people meditate.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe one.
Probably less than that.
Maybe, yeah. So maybe you have to have 100 people to get a few.
Probably a few,
people that
yeah.
said, yeah, I meditate. Or But how beneficial it is to just, even if it's for 10 minutes, to just be alone with yourself and be okay with that and be comfortable in your own skin and focus on your breath and let, like you say, let those thoughts that come to your mind, acknowledge that they're there and just let them go. Right. And just get back to kind of thinking about your breath, the in and the out, and the seconds that you're inhaling and the seconds that you're exhaling and those seconds in between when you're holding it, and just think about that. And there's even there was a few years back where I was actually practicing just at my desk for a period of time, and it was like counting your breaths, counting the seconds of your inhale and the exhale, and trying to do it first, like even just start for like 3 minutes or 5 minutes and work your way up to where you could do it for 10 or even up to 20 minutes. And how amazing that is for just mental clarity. Oh, yeah. But it does allow you to get more in touch. When you add the yoga, the physical, the movement, it gets you, now you're like connecting the dots with things, because people are so out of touch with their body and like how things are supposed to feel and work, right? There's just this mind-muscle connection is just like pathetic.
Yeah, and that brings me to the point of meditating, which I spoke about before. Now, when I mention the word meditate, the first thing that crosses people's minds is like a monk in a monastery with the bald head that's totally secluded, that is just oming a lot. Now that's a very superficial representation of meditating. Meditating, when you look at it from, our Western point of view, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, which most people in our culture and society see the world from that scientific point of view, they want the studies, they want the research. When you look at what meditating is with that, it's simply strengthening the brain, strengthening the mind. Now, meditating, you can equate that to lifting weights for your mind. That's how I love to represent it as. Because all you're really doing is you're sitting and you're not doing anything. You're closing your eyes to take away all the visual stimulation, and you just bring the awareness from the external to the internal. Because in our everyday lives, we're out there, we're rushing, we're working, we're getting the kids to school, we're rushing, we're eating, we're moving, getting things done. And we're always focused on the external. So when we take, even if it's just 5-10 minutes a day, to shut all that down and bring the awareness inside to your breath, to your sensations, to the thoughts that keep running around in your mind. And you don't attach to any of that, you just let that be. And you keep on bringing the awareness back to the breath over and over again. You see your mind wander. I'm not judging myself. Let me just bring it back to the breath. When you get in the habit of doing that, that translates into your everyday life. You just become more grounded, more present. You are less likely to be distracted by impulses and emotions. You are more clear in your mind. And science backs this up. More and more scientific research is showing that meditating, just simply sitting there and focusing on the breath or your sensations or just whatever type of, there's many different kinds of meditation. They all prove to be beneficial by lowering your blood pressure, like totally clearing out all the stress hormones that we have in our bloodstreams at all times. When you're constantly rushing, when you're constantly in that fight or flight state, your body is sensing it's in an emergency state because you're stressing. And our bodies adapted, or they evolved in order to only turn that fight or flight state when you're in an emergency situation, like in our past, if a lion was chasing you,
right.
or if you have to respond to an emergency. Well, the body and the mind, they don't know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat.
Yeah.
So when you're constantly stressing out about, work or what you have to do later, and you're in your mind and you're thinking about it and you're stressing, your body is seeing that as an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol is up, adrenaline is up.
Yeah.
What that does,
your adrenals are just on overload.
And then when on top of that, when you have people that are constantly drinking coffee, that causes the adrenal fatigue that we see.
Right.
And so what meditating does is it brings you from that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system, and it brings you into the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest or digest. And that is also the difference. Let's say you work out. If you're always in a fight or flight state, your body is breaking down tissue. It's in a catabolic state. Now, when you bring your nervous system to that rest or digest, that is its opportunity to grow, to repair. So when you look at it from that standpoint, when you're always in that fight or flight, when you're always stressing, your body is not recovering from your workout. So when you consciously bring your awareness back into that state of relaxation, into that state of mindfulness, of conscious, being, your body repairs. You grow stronger. You're more grounded.
Why is for all the reasons why sleep is so beneficial to us for our bodies to be in an anabolic state,
right,
where we can grow and repair and refresh and do all those things. This is kind of what we're getting from these which is. But we're actually conscious.
We're conscious.
So it's
focus.
Focus.
When we're sleeping, we're not really focused. Our brain waves, and it's all about the brain waves. So I actually have a meditation practice. Every morning I meditate for at least 15 minutes, and I use what's called the Muse headband, M-U-S-E. And what it does is it's a headband that has brain sensors on it. So when I meditate, I put it on and I have my headphones in. And it reads your brain waves. There's different brain waves. There's alpha waves, there's beta waves, theta waves, delta waves, depending on the state that you're in. And so what this does is it gives me real-time feedback as I'm sitting there meditating. So it plays the sounds of the ocean. Now, when my brain waves get active, when my mind starts running, that means my brain is in beta waves. That lets me know that by the waves on the ocean start crashing, they start getting louder. So that tells me, let me calm down. Let me focus more on my breath. And then when the waves get lower into the more alpha waves and even deeper into the theta waves, that tells me by letting the waves start lapping gently, and then birds chirp when I'm really calm. So this gives me real-time feedback on, okay. It lets me know where I'm at, where my brain waves are at. So when you consciously do that during your day, it's almost like you're taking these mini power naps through your day. And you don't even have to set aside 5 minutes of your time to sit and have your eyes closed. You can practice meditation at any time throughout the day.
As long as you're not driving.
You can even you can consciously. You just sit there and breathe, and
That's
focus
true.
on.
You can focus on your breath while
you can focus. You can turn off the music. You can listen to the sounds. You can focus on the sounds of the car as it drives. You can meditate anything. You're brushing your teeth. You're eating. Mindful eating is huge.
Really
mindful. Like so many people, especially in our society, they just mindlessly eat.
Yeah.
They're not actually tasting the food. They're just gulping it down. They're eating while they're driving. They're eating while they're working. And what that does is you don't truly enjoy the food, and then you overeat. You're not listening to your body's signals because you're distracted while you're eating. So you can literally meditate doing anything. And that's why yoga is so powerful. Because as you get more comfortable with yoga, as you become more, as you get used to it, it goes from just a physical activity into that moving meditation, because now you're consciously moving with each breath. You're moving with the inhale, you're moving with the exhale, you're building that mind-body connection in a way that even just normal meditation can't do. A lot of people who only focus on meditating and they just sit there and they're constantly meditating, they allow their bodies to kind of just go to waste. And your mind can't feel good if your body doesn't feel good.
Right.
There's a huge correlation there. So why yoga is so powerful is it allows the body to open up. It allows the tension to release. It just allows you to feel good in your body, which in turn allows you to feel good in your mind.
And about 6 months ago, you started doing a private class for us here.
Mm-hmm.
We used to call it a yoga class, I guess.
Yeah.
We could, right? Session, whatever you want to call it. And it was for whoever was here. You know, whether it was Mike and me, or Mike and Brian and I. And so I think we're over 6 months now. Right?
Yeah, we're over 6 months.
We're into 7 or 8 months of doing it with you. And so I'd never experienced yoga before. Other than, I had experienced it before doing yoga burn, but that was, like a beginner routine that we have, and it's great. It's all kind of your standard yoga poses and stuff, and whether it's cat-cow or
the warriors,
child's pose, or stuff like that. Different planking and threading the needle,
down dog,
down dog, and all that
just
stuff.
Traditional yoga,
and we enjoyed it, and we got a lot out of it, because as guys who've been lifting for 25, 30 years, we needed some other types of activity for our bodies. But when you came into it, you kind of assessed and saw what our needs were, and you made the focus on the breath and the focus on the getting into certain positions that you knew we needed. It's almost like an intense stretching session, right? With us, pretty much.
A mindful stretching session.
We'll use your terms. A mindful stretching session, which is, it's basically a solid hour, sometimes even longer, of us getting into these, positions for our hips, for our, whether it's our inner thighs or our hamstrings, or our our backs, our sides, our obliques, whatever it is, and we're holding these positions, and we're like you're always bringing us back to the breath. But this is not traditional, like what a lot of people probably think of yoga. They're thinking like warrior pose, and
triangle,
down dog, and all that
the
stuff.
poses where it's faster paced. It's more of a flow. So I teach those as well, because I went through the teacher training program.
Right.
I'm a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. So I actually teach at a studio, and I do that normal type of yoga. And that's powerful in its own right.
Sure.
Like, normal yoga is amazing. But when I especially all the guys here at Criticalbench, everyone's like an athlete, everyone's tight, and they need something other than that. So what I do, I just call it, athletic yoga therapy.
Right.
And what that is like Chris said, it's holding the poses longer than you normally would in a class, and then consciously breathing into it. So when you're in an uncomfortable situation, in whatever kind of situation it is, in your body, your mind, whenever you're feeling uncomfortable, the first thing to go is the breath. If you notice, your breath becomes more shallow.
Yeah.
If you're holding a stretch and it hurts, or it's uncomfortable, you start like you restrict the breath.
Yeah.
So by finding that sticking point of discomfort and breathing into it, consciously becoming aware and directing the breath to that place of discomfort over a couple breaths, even, you start to notice that it starts to release. As you consciously bring the breath, you bring the body from that emergency state into the rest or digest, the body responds to the breath, and the mind responds to the body. So your body just begins to release, and then you just feel way better in your body. Especially for athletes, yoga is huge and will increase your performance in so many different ways.
Yeah, and I had heard that before, and I know, from bodybuilders to NFL players to other types of athletes, I've heard about some of these guys in the off-season stuff. They do a lot of like yoga and things similar to really focus on these other the other side of things. You know, it's like the fire and brimstone heavy lifter Marine alpha male, right? And then you got like dial it back a little bit and like do that inward look.
Exactly.
And like assess where you're at physically, where you're at mentally, and bring those two things together. Because oftentimes too, a lot of this, because of the way we live in this fast-paced, stressful type existence, you know, we don't ever take a moment, God forbid, like a day off of work or something like that, right? Take a vacation day and just go like sit on a bench and read somewhere.
Yeah.
Who the hell does that? You know? So, although we should, most of us just don't. That's what I'm gaining from this. It's like I'm an athlete. I'm an old, I'm 42 years old. My body's done a lot of physical activity since I was a kid, but I never did any kind of focus on like what we do, which is like mindful stretching, like you said. I mean, rolling around on the ground for 5 minutes, doing a little stretch like before or after like a workout. I mean, that's one thing, but like really focus on my breath and trying to like put my body into positions that I can hold and like breathe through it. No matter how, because there's a few. I think it's when you we do like a pigeon, basically a pigeon pose, right? And then we fall over our front leg. And I think probably just because my hips are so tight from sitting a lot, from being on a computer or whatever, man, do I feel that one. Yeah. Like it's uncomfortable for me to hold that, but you'll have us holding that for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and exactly.
And at least, and we're just trying to breathe into it. But at the end of the session, me and some of the other guys, I mean, we're on that fine line of falling asleep and
twilight state.
Yeah, we're in that twilight state because we're finally like to a place where we've let go,
surrender to the experience.
Yeah,
that's
and it takes time. Like I wasn't that comfortable the first few sessions, I don't think. Like I had to really like focus on my breathing. Like this is weird. This feels strange. But now it's just like I feel like I can get into it pretty fast. I feel like within the first 5 or 10 minutes, I'm in. I try not to even open my eyes very much for like the whole hour. I noticed
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I try to really stay in it. You know, and you with us, you just use a few things. Use a blanket, a strap, and a couple yoga blocks.
Yep.
And that's it. And those extra tools help us like do some of these positions like holding the leg out to the side to like get the groin and the hips and stuff and the hamstrings. I mean but it works.
That's
and
the
your
key.
Legs feel longer and better and stuff.
Exactly. And the thing about yoga is especially a lot of men get caught up in the fact that yoga, yoga is for chicks, like I'm not about to go to the yoga studio, wear some yoga pants and say namastes and ohms, I'm gonna go to the gym and lift heavy weights and that's what a man does.
Right.
And the thing about it is, the funny thing is yes, lifting weights is important for everyone. It builds bone density, it makes you stronger, it increases your testosterone. Yes, lifting weights is important. But if you are closed-minded to yoga simply because, your masculinity is threatened if you're caught inside a yoga studio, then you should really take a look at, how comfortable you are being a man. The way I see it, a true man is a man who can do yoga without fear of his identity as a man being threatened. You can go to a yoga studio, do yoga, and still be comfortable that you're a man. Right. Not because the activity you're doing is considered manly or not, but because you are grounded in yourself. You know that you're a man, so anything you do is manly. That's how I see yoga, because I notice when I'm talking about yoga to a lot of athletes or people, they're give me a weird look, yoga, what am I, a chick? And I'm well, take a look at that, bro. This is a great opportunity to really look at your identity, your who you are as a man, because that's where a lot of people get caught up. A lot of athletes and a lot of other men who would really get so much benefit, who would really see, physical results in their athletic performance and how they are in their everyday life and their level of groundedness and calmness, they don't experience it because of a fragile ego. So I really say, use it as an opportunity to cultivate some more masculinity, because a true man, in my opinion, is a man who is comfortable with whatever parts of him is feminine, is balancing it out. Because listen, I've lived the life of the hyper-masculine, of alpha males, of nothing but lifting heavy weights and beating each other up and fighting in the barracks. And I live that in the Marine Corps. And I've noticed that causes a lot of imbalances. You're denying parts of yourself. Because in our culture, as men, we want to be the alpha male. We want to be aggressive. And yes, there's a place for that. But if you don't do anything to balance that out, it causes problems. And yoga is a great opportunity to balance out your masculinity and to just improve all aspects of your life.
Yeah. Well, and it's good. You just did a great job describing it. Balance is so so important. And most of us have and I put myself in that, even just simply your work-life balance. People have an out-of-whack work-life balance, right? Or there's balance in all things, right? Or moderation would be another way to put it, right? So it's we drink too little water, we drink too much water, we drink too little, we eat too much of this, we eat too little of that, whatever. So it's all about being aware and being mindful, like you said, of all these things in your life, and how understanding that the benefits outweigh the I'm just too darn old to really give a heck of what other people think anyway. This is what it comes down to. I think that's I maybe some people, as they get older, they still care about what everybody else thinks, but I really don't care what everyone else thinks.
That's a good thing.
You got to get past that in life. If you do something and you get a lot of enjoyment out of it and fulfillment out of it, it's it's good. Yeah, because it can be a turnoff, like you said. I mean, I would say you're rare though. You're 24 years old and you're a yoga instructor.
Yeah.
It's probably not and people look at you funny all the time.
Yeah, that's
when you tell them this.
That's right? The funny thing I've realized is, I'm also a personal trainer. I have my NASM certification. I've been personal training. So that's the first thing I am. And then on top of that, I have my 200-hour yoga teacher training certification. And when I've been telling people that, I'm like, oh, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen a personal trainer that's a yoga instructor that looks the way you do. Because honestly, a lot of the guys who do yoga, or the representation that our society has of men who do yoga, are skinnier, are not really, they're very flexible, but they're not strong in the sense that
they're
think they are.
Feminine guys.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. So that's why I'm grateful to be in the position I'm in, because, and also the fact that I'm a veteran. The fact that I can relate instantly to veterans, to combat veterans, to guys who have been through it all, who have been down in the dumps, to the fact that I can relate to them and really show them the power of yoga and how it can change their life. Because at the end of the day, yoga helps at anxiety, depression, PTSD, any other mental issue you have. It helps that. And I'm blessed to be in a position that I can relate to veterans and get them to open up to the idea of yoga. Not just veterans, but other men, other athletes. I'm in the unique position as a yoga instructor that I can really get them to open up to the idea yoga is actually really beneficial. If I can get past the fact that yoga isn't just for women, then I can really reap the benefits. Yeah. And I'm in the position that I can, get that out to the world.
So, and we're talking about something that's been around for
thousands of years.
A long time.
Thousands of years.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's new to our society. And when I say new, it's been around for a couple of decades. But that's chump change compared to the fact that it's existed for thousands of years on the other side of the world.
And the ironic thing is that when yoga was first being created, it was created by men for men. Like in those ancient times of India, now remember it was different times.
Sure.
But back then, women were forbidden to practice yoga because yoga was seen as a spiritual, a course to enlightenment. That was what the ancients saw yoga as. And, now we're at a point in our time that, we're in a much better time that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You can do, we're more free. But that's the ironic thing is like now guys are like, oh, no, yoga's for chicks. It's like, no, if you look at the roots of yoga, yoga's for men, so and yes, it's been around for thousands of years. And when yoga first started, it was just a means to meditate. The way that they created the postures, the way that they created what's called the asanas, which is the physical movements, is a way to open up the energy centers in the body, the meridians. And in our society, we're like, that doesn't really make sense to us because we have a different model of medicine. We have our Western model of medicine where we look at the individual parts of the body and we fix those parts. Like if you have mental problems, you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. If you have a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist, stomach doctor. You go to specialist doctors. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is one way of looking at health and one way of looking at the body. And then
and dealing with symptoms.
And dealing with symptoms and dealing with disease and all that. And then on the other side of the world, you have other medical models. All it is different models, such as Ayurveda in India and traditional Chinese medicine in China. And they have a different way of looking at the body, a more holistic approach. And there's not one right way or not one wrong way. They're just different. And so yoga works to open up the channels of the body, to allow things to move, to allow the lymphatic system to be allowed to flush the toxins out of our body. And it allows the body to be comfortable to get into that meditative state. So yoga, when it first was created, was just simply a means to get more comfortable into meditation. So when you really look at the roots of yoga and you start to understand it, it's like, oh, there's more to yoga than simply getting more flexibility or getting more balance, or there's so much more to yoga than just an exercise.
I mean, I guarantee you if just what we're doing, and all of our sessions with you are a little bit different. It depends on which direction you want to go and where you want to focus. There's sometimes there's certain positions that we don't go to, and we spend more time in others or whatever, or you introduce new things to focus on. If they implemented more things like that into just, I guess, made it more because it does, yoga has this like this certain like aura about it, or right, that but it's
new. It's almost like new agey.
Yeah,
like people look at it and be like, oh, it's woo woo,
right,
new agey, kind of like.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to present. We've done some simple yoga videos to go onto the YouTube channel where you're just showing like maybe like 3 poses that could help stretch out your back, or 3 poses for your chest, 3 poses for your inner thigh, stuff like that, stuff that people can just do at home on their own. And to make it more palatable like that for the everyday average person who is, and maybe that would just open it's probably going to go that way. But I mean, if people knew like that NFL guys and MLB guys and hockey players and stuff were doing this stuff, and it was out there, and then all of a sudden, okay, it'd be more accepted, right?
Yeah.
It'd be, okay, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's
because the thing about being, all right, so let's say you're a professional athlete, right? If you practice yoga, yes, you become more flexible. Yes, you have more balance. Yes, you have more core strength, because proper yoga is you're using mindfully with your core. All movement begins at the core. You're using the breath to strengthen the core. So yes, you're getting all these physical aspects which improve your athletic performance. But there's something else. You also strengthen your mind-body connection. Now what that does is it allows you to have more control over your body. It allows you to use your breath to have more control over your body. So let's say you're playing your sport. When you use that breath, you become more present. Now think about how that affects you playing your sport. If you are more present, you are more grounded, you are more there, and you use the breath to calm you down. Because when you're playing a sport, if your adrenaline is always high, you're not going to think clearly. You're going to make mistakes. So if you're more calm and you use your breath as an anchor and you move from your breath, you are a much better athlete. And also, you also have more control over your body, so you don't waste unnecessary energy. You only move when you have to move. You only act or react when you have to react, so when you have more control over your body, your athletic performance, yes, physically, but also mentally is drastically improved. You just have more control. I mean, think about the ramifications that has for an athlete. And then not just for athletes, think about how that has an effect in your everyday life. When you have to think and you're overthinking and you're stressing and your adrenaline is running, you're not thinking clearly.
But if you are actively practicing yoga and you're mindful when it comes to breathing, that anchor is always there for you to come back to ground you, to refocus you, calm you down, reduce anxiety, de-stress, whatever it is, and get you a little bit more in the moment and like, okay, I got this or whatever, I mean, there's definitely a major calming, side of it, and you just afterwards, not only feeling better, physically, of course, but just mentally afterwards, it might be a little bit of that fatigue or I got a little but we're still babies out there really when it comes to it. We're still learning like how to improve our ability in doing it, and because like you said, if you're actually just falling asleep, I mean, okay, cool, it's benefiting you, but really you want to kind of be present and just still stay focused on the breath. So it's that, like you said, it's that fine line of like calm, relaxed, focused on the breath, but not necessarily falling asleep, which I still have a tendency to do almost every session.
You didn't today, though. You did good.
I did briefly, but remember I told you I kind of actually woke myself up.
Using the breath,
yeah.
And another thing about it is oxygen is calming.
Yeah.
Oxygen calms you down. And so when you're fully breathing and when you're moving your body in these poses, you're oxygenating all the cells in your body. So, parts of your body that are not used to getting oxygen, when you're stretching them out and consciously breathing the breath there, you're oxygenating those parts of the body, which has, so many health benefits, so many mental benefits. It's just, if everyone, they didn't even have to practice yoga, but practice mindful breathing throughout your day or through stressful situations, then, everyone, we would have so much less of these mental health issues in this country. All the stress, all the burnout, all the adrenal fatigue, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of these would be drastically reduced if we just brought our attention internally more often, using the breath, using yoga, using whatever form of exercise, because anything can be a meditation. So it's really the key to improving your life is not to look for the next medication or the supplement or this or that or any external thing. It's simply returning to yourself, returning to the internal, developing a better relationship with your body, with your mind, and with your spirit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's what we're all about here. Strong by Design, mind, body, spirit. Well, this has been fantastic. We'll have to do it again sometime. That was great. And anyone who wants to see you, besides, this will end up on YouTube anyway, but anyone who wants to see you in action, whether it's yoga or whether it's breathing techniques and stuff, we have a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/criticalbench and you can check out Zach in action showing you exactly how to do this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of other great things that we could get into, and we'll save that for another time. But it's been fantastic having you. I'm so glad you made time in your busy schedule to sit down with us and cover some of this great material. So thank you, listeners, for checking in with us, and hope you found some benefit to this, and the power of the breath and the power of yoga and meditation. It's been fantastic for us, and we'll talk to you again real soon, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Strong by Design. We'll talk to you soon.